With OCD, there is a high rate of comorbidity for anxiety disorders. It's the learning to handle those different feelings and gaining confidence in that area. We can't get rid of uncomfortable feelings in our life. That's just the way of it. There's always going to be uncomfortable physical sensations. There's always going to be uncomfortable emotions. Fighting it makes it worse. Life's uncomfortable. And so we are learning to get comfortable with the discomfort. And your world becomes a whole lot bigger once you do that.
You've probably heard of OCD, but you don't know that OCD isn't really just about cleaning and organization. It's actually debilitating. It's a condition that causes intrusive, persistent, and really sticky feelings and thoughts that can seize on any topic, from romantic relationships to illness to spirituality, and really anything that matters to you. This can really cause significant anxiety and guilt and shame and discomfort, and can make it hard to function in day-to-day life. If this sounds familiar, know that you're not alone. In fact, 1 in 40 people in the U.S. suffer from obsessive compulsive disorder. But help is available. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist with 25 years of OCD treatment experience, so I know that these scary symptoms can be overwhelming. But I also know that they can be managed with the right type of treatment. I lead a team of top-tier clinical experts at NOCD who are trained in the effective treatment for obsessive compulsive disorder. NOCD is an online platform offering specialized, accessible, and convenient OCD treatment. My team and I have helped people take back their lives from OCD through evidence-based therapies that are covered by insurance. To learn more about OCD and to start effective treatment, head to nocd.com. That's NOCD.com. You deserve to live the life you want to live, and not the life that OCD wants you to live. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can stay up to date on our latest podcasts and webinars. Now, on to today's episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Get to Know OCD podcast. I'm excited today to have one of my colleagues, Shauna Pichette, on, and we are going to discuss all things anxiety disorders and treatment for things like panic and somatic OCD. What is the anxiety sensitivity experience? What's an interoceptive exposure? Lots to go over. But before we get into that, Shauna, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody and tell them a little bit about you and your role here at NOCD?
Hi, great. Thank you. So I'm Shauna Pichette. I am a licensed professional counselor in the states of Wisconsin, Oregon, and California. And at NOCD, I am the clinical operational manager for a team, as well as the clinical lead for anxiety disorder treatment. Outside of here, I have a small private practice and consultation business, as well as I am an International OCD Foundation faculty member.
Fantastic. Well, let's get into it. You have been in this field for how long, and how did you get started?
I've been in the field for 10 years officially, but specializing in OCD and anxiety disorders for 9 of those 10 years. So I found my niche pretty early on and fell in love with the work and haven't looked back.
And how did you find that niche? How did it find you? Maybe
I think it found me, actually.
Yeah,
yes.
all right. Mm-hmm.
So started not sure exactly what specialty I wanted to go into. And then I was working on moving back to Wisconsin and got offered a role at Rogers and started working with kids and adolescents at the residential level of care. And they all had very significant OCD and anxiety disorders, as well as other obsessive compulsive related conditions. And I didn't know much about it at the time, and then realized that this was very quickly exactly what I wanted to do, and where I needed to be was working in the OCD world.
Fantastic. And that puts a specialty, obviously, then in that anxiety and OCD for you that you have stuck with ever since.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, stayed with it and have continued to grow in that space.
Awesome. Since you do anxiety lead here, and we talk about the fact that OCD usually doesn't show up alone. It brings friends like mood conditions, anxiety disorders, things of that nature. Today, I wanted to focus with you on the anxiety disorder specifically. So let's talk a little bit about anxiety disorders, what they are, this idea of anxiety sensitivity, and that experience, and then ways that we would go about treating anxiety disorders and anxiety disorders that show up along with obsessive compulsive disorder.
Yeah, absolutely. So excited to get into that topic because I think that's something I really do care about for many, many reasons. But I think our comorbid disorders definitely need a lot of attention. So with OCD, there is a high, like you said, high rate of comorbidity for anxiety disorders, mood disorders, as well as other obsessive compulsive related disorders like hoarding, body focus, repetitive behaviors, tics. But we're gonna not talk about those today. We'll stay in that anxiety disorder sphere. So when
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I would say, and for us, just for everybody, if sometimes I throw out a technical term, and so I'll say comorbid just means not uncommonly connected with something that we would see. So again, OCD and depression have very strong ties to each other. So comorbid just means that more. Now that I say it out loud, morbid sounds really morbid. Actually, now that I say that, yeah, but it just
does
means
sound morbid.
yeah, often co-occurring.
I call it like coexisting. Is
Coexisting,
I
like
refer
that.
to
Yeah,
it.
yeah, we could say that too. However we want to say it. That's
yeah, co-occurring or coexisting sound a little
better than comorbid. Yeah, co-terrible or something like that, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so high chance that if you have OCD, you don't just have OCD, right? It doesn't always operate on its own, and so we see a lot of those other conditions come along too for the ride.
Yeah.
So
now let's talk about that more specifically for anxiety disorders. Then fill us in a little bit on those co-occurrences that happen.
yeah, so higher rates of having an anxiety disorder along with OCD. Some of those common anxiety disorders are things like generalized anxiety disorder, which is lots of worries about lots of things, lots of the time. It's kind of how I sum that one up.
Lots of.
Lots, right? It's general. It's all over. And then we have social anxiety disorder, in which someone's kind of core fear, biggest kind of central worry here is that they're going to be judged, evaluated, or criticized. Then we have illness anxiety disorders. This one really tends to have a lot of overlap with OCD as well. So illness anxiety disorder is this worry that there is something wrong with me. And I don't know what it is necessarily. And then health OCD can present very similarly to this. We can get into some more nuances of that later if you would like. And then specific phobia. So that's just a very specific fear. Is a way to kind of teach the difference. It's just a fear of this one thing. So for example, needles, dogs, open water, anything
elevators,
specific. Elevators, right? Then we have agoraphobia, which is a fear of 3 out of 5 different things. So it could be wide open spaces, enclosed spaces, public transportation, being away from home, and being in a crowded space.
Yeah, standing in line,
in a
crowd,
yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
So 3 out of those 5 to be agoraphobia. And like I'm missing some anxiety disorders. What am I missing here, Patrick?
Well, our panic, right? Just the fear of what if I were to have a panic attack, or
yes.
the panic, the sensations of panic, which is going to lead into our interoceptive exposure talk.
Yeah. Forgot one of the most important ones.
The most basic one. That's right. All right. Okay.
It's almost like we're here to talk about panic stuff.
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah. Joking aside, panic is a really serious condition because there's so many people who, when they're having a panic attack, think they're dying, that they need to go to the emergency room, something terrible's happening, and would like quick fix medications like benzodiazepines as a way to calm them down. And emergency rooms are getting less and less likely to give those things out to people because they can be abused. And so our goal is to help people learn how to live with these panic sensations and symptoms. So why don't you talk a little bit about that and how we go about doing that?
Yeah, so that's a great segue into talking about anxiety sensitivity. So anxiety sensitivity is seen with so many different diagnoses. So I think it can be really helpful to just kind of picture or think of anxiety sensitivity as this overarching thing that can occur. In which people are sensitive to the experience of anxiety, right? Let's use the words that are being used there.
Yeah.
So someone has a physical sensation, perhaps, my heart starts to go a little bit faster. Then what happens is that physical sensation is followed up by attached meaning. Oh, that must be bad. My heart rate shouldn't be going faster. Then people get anxious. And I'm nervous because I don't want to have a heart attack. Then that increases the physical sensation of the heart rate increasing, right? Because
Sure.
anxiety can often be a racing heart. And so then it creates the cycle in which the physical sensations fuel the anxious feelings and they just go back and forth. And so it builds upon itself. And that's how we get things like panic or somatic OCD presentations or illness anxiety. It's this misattribution or mislabeling of a physical sensation as being dangerous, as being something unwanted or scary or, a sign of catastrophe. And so then I must get out of that feeling or do something about it. And so that's when people use things like you just said, like benzos, right? I'm going to have a fast acting benzodiazepine, which is going to help me reduce that feeling of anxiety and get out of there quickly. Or I'm going to take some deep breaths and really calm myself down because that feeling is bad. So what we do is we then treat it with interoceptives, in which we try to break that cycle of anxiety sensitivity.
So an interoceptive is an exposure to some kind of physical sensation that somebody experiences during panic. So can you give us some examples of what that might look like?
Absolutely. So with your clinician, you should be trying to find very specifically what your feelings are of anxiety or what those feelings are that tend to trigger that panic. And then they want to recreate these little doses of that physical sensation. It can be kind of seen as like a test run for anxiety, perhaps. So if I have, for example, the heart racing, I would try to find ways to get my client to increase their heart rate. So that might be doing things like 60 seconds of jumping jacks.
Okay.
That's going to get your heart rate going up. It may be
Yeah.
going up and down stairs. It could be things like even like breathing through a straw. So really restricting how much air you're getting can then increase kind of that physical labor that's going on in your body can increase your heart rate as a result.
Okay. And we might do things with breathing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we might hold our breath or we might hyperventilate. People can do spinning where they will spin in a chair to get dizzy because some people have the fear of what if I feel dizzy or discombobulated in some
Right. Or what if
way,
this
right?
dizziness means I'm losing my mind or there's something medically wrong? Or yeah, we could have people spin in a chair and create that feeling of nausea if someone has a fear of throwing up even.
Yeah. And the goal of all of this is not that we want someone having a panic attack. I think sometimes people hear this and they think they're trying to make me have a panic attack. That is
Right.
that is
Nope.
not at all the goal, actually. It
Nope.
is to break this down one symptom at a time and to really learn that I can handle that symptom, that I don't need to be afraid of that. So as people do this, what have you heard from folks? What do they say about this experience?
Yeah. I think most people are scared before they start off with interoceptives or like this, like you said. What do you mean? You're trying to make me have a panic attack, or you want me to have these really uncomfortable physical sensations? And then as they go through it, there's such an increase in confidence in their ability to handle just different fluctuations within their body, right? Our bodies are doing all sorts of weird stuff all the time. And
All the time.
so all
Mhm.
the time, right? We can't
Mhm.
attach a meaning to every little thing that we feel. And so most of the time bodies are just being bodies. They're just doing what they do. And there's no catastrophic reason for that. So people then gain confidence in their ability to even just have these random sensations occur. So I have a client who I worked with recently who one of his big worries is what if I lose my sense of self? And so physical
Mhm.
sensations can trigger that. What if this dizziness means that I'm developing a brain tumor, which means I'm going to lose my sense of self?
Mm,
What
mhm.
if my heart racing means I'm gonna have a heart attack or a stroke, which means I'm then gonna lose some of my physical functioning? So we did interoceptives, and he recently had a cold. Cold people get them all the time, but
Sure.
he felt those different feelings of, oh, it's kind of hard to breathe. No, I don't like that. Oh, there's a feeling in my throat. And instead of being triggered by those feelings like he normally would, he was able to say, yeah, maybe this is my worst fear coming true, or maybe it's a common cold and I should just wait it out. So being able to have that confidence in himself to feel those different sensations, even though it wasn't directly what we were working on, just having that fluctuation was a big step for him to just feel different and be okay with it.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I think it surprises people sometimes when we say these things that this helps people to feel better. But
Right.
the opposite treatment, which many people go through for panic, is diaphragmatic breathing, progressive
Mhm.
muscle relaxation. And every time you feel any kind of discomfort, do those things. And then people get to spending hours and hours and hours of a day doing those things, instead of learning that you can actually just handle some uncomfortable physical sensations without having to do all of this stuff that you've been taught by therapists who don't really specialize in anxiety disorders, who are trying to help you get rid of these things instead of learn how to handle
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, exactly. It's the learning to handle those different feelings and gaining confidence in that area. Um, and I think so often people do, yeah, they have lots of worries about what could possibly be going on there. And so try to keep the feelings away versus allowing them to be present. And like, well, we can't get rid of uncomfortable feelings in our life. That's just the way of it, right? There's always going to be uncomfortable physical sensations. There's always going to be uncomfortable emotions. Fighting it makes it worse.
Yeah. When you're teaching therapists about this, it's got to be kind of a switch, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
because many therapists who come in to either what you do here at NOCD, what you do through IOCDF, have been taught the basics of diaphragmatic breathing, muscle relaxation, stick your hand in a bucket of ice, those types of things, all to distract yourself. What's their reaction when you start talking about
Yeah.
having people live with their discomfort instead of trying to do something to make it go away?
Yeah, I've gotten a variety of reactions from people. Some people are excited to try something different because, maybe they've worked with panic before. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, like it kind of helps things for a while, but I feel like it doesn't really keep it away. Other people think I'm downright cruel to suggest this. But I think this is such a good opportunity for us as therapists to put faith into our clients as well. Our clients are tougher than sometimes people give them credit for.
I would
We work,
agree.
yeah, we work with incredibly resilient people, and so it is really uncomfortable though for therapists to not jump into that saving or that like get them out of that feeling mode. It can be really hard mental adjustment for therapists to switch their mindset on that.
There's people who keep bringing up that phrase, though, that I have to fight this, right? Because
Mhm.
this idea that I have to win over this. How do you help people deal with this notion that fighting it can make it worse? Actually, how do you get that across?
Okay, so how would I help someone come from a place of fighting it to like accepting it? I think it's a difficult mental switch, right? To go from I need to fight this, I need to get rid of this, because I do think there is this meaning, or I know there is a meaning attached to emotions and sensations. People often say, no, that's a bad feeling, or that's a good feeling, or that's a bad emotion, that's a good emotion, right? We have to get rid of all of the bad emotions. And so it goes to this place of recognizing that's not realistic. And I think, so often people with OCD have this feeling like I'm special in a bad way. I'm the only person. Like I wouldn't say that to my mom that, oh, she's never allowed to feel anxious. But me, I'm never allowed to feel anxious. Right? That special in a bad way mentality that comes along with having OCD. And so they're able to often recognize other people don't have to fight this. They can, be accepting of all their different feelings and sensations. But I, however, need to have this like experience where I never feel anxious otherwise. Maybe I'm a failure, or it means I'm not doing well at therapy, or whatever that worry might be that comes along with it. And so there's a lot of education that goes into recognizing that emotions are just emotions, and we can have all of the emotions. We don't have to fight them. We can accept them. We can kind of ride the wave, let them be there, and acknowledge like the myriad of emotions that are present at one time too.
Yeah, and some people just have categorized certain emotions as
Mm-hmm.
bad, right?
Yeah.
That I shouldn't have them.
Yeah.
And my fear always in that situation is the once that's happened, that's the ones you're looking out for. And when you're looking for it, you're going to find it. And when you find it, you experience it. And then that proves to you, oh, see, I'm a person who has bad emotions.
Yeah. Therefore, I'm a failure or whatever it might be, right?
Yeah. Or I have to do this quick
Mhm.
fix thing to make it go away because it shouldn't be there. Do do you believe there's any emotion that is just off the table and not allowed to be experienced?
I don't think so.
I don't either, but anxiety and OCD sure do, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so maybe what we're actually battling isn't that there's a bad emotion, because I don't think that
Mhm.
there is. I think that there's bad information about emotions that
Yes.
our brain is kind of caught onto and has said, we shouldn't be having this. This shouldn't be happening. We shouldn't be experiencing this. And I just kind of call bullshit on that and say, but why not? What's
Yeah.
wrong with experiencing something, right?
Yeah. In fact, I often talk about how if we don't have anxiety, actually we'll die. Right?
Yeah, right.
Anxiety keeps us alive, but with anxiety disorders or OCD, it's like faulty smoke alarm that goes off even if you just turn on the oven, the smoke alarm's like yelling fire at you. We do need that smoke alarm though in case there is a fire, right?
Sure.
So enough anxiety keeps us alive.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
helpful in many ways. It
Yeah.
just the volume's turned up too loud with anxiety disorders and OCD. And
Right.
then as a result, people don't want any of those feelings.
I love the show on NPR, Invisibilia. I don't know if you've
Oh, I don't know
heard
that
that
one.
podcast. The first and second episodes are pretty amazing. The first one goes over a person who has harm OCD and who was afraid, what if he were to harm his wife and stab her and do all these things? And
Yeah.
it goes through ERP, which is great. And the second one is about an interview with a woman who has no anxiety, no fear.
Yeah.
And the reason is she's got a disease that turns your amygdala when you hit your teenage years into something that absorbs calcium, which means it turns basically into a rock, and therefore it doesn't work the way it's supposed to anymore. And in that case, you can't have a fear response.
Mhm.
And you can't actually interview these people without going through like 5 other people to get them. And when you do, you're not allowed to know their name, where they live, anything like this, because these people live a very difficult life. Not
Mhm.
like if you're literally walking across the street and a car's coming at you, you have to think about getting out of the way because you don't have a fight, flight, or freeze response to get out of the way. That's potentially really dangerous, right? So
Very dangerous.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So a lot of people will say to you and they'll say to me, I just don't want to
Yeah.
feel anxious anymore. And I say, that's not the goal, right?
That's not
That's
the goal.
not
That's
why we're
funny you
here.
bring that up because I have never seen that episode, but I've read articles about
Yeah,
people like that, and so I'll send that to my clients and be like, "Hey,
me too.
this is what no anxiety looks like, right? This is 0 for anxiety. Do we think this is realistic? And do
No.
we want that even if it was?" And
Mm-mm.
the answer is no. Like we want a healthy dose of anxiety to keep us alive.
100%. Absolutely. We want that. Yeah. Because you were right, Shauna. We don't make it in the world otherwise, right? It just doesn't work. So kind of in similarities to that, we have the panic symptoms. Sometimes OCD uses panic and it'll say, if you don't do this compulsion, you're going to have a panic attack, right?
Yeah.
So we can use even interoceptive work in OCD, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Interoceptive has so many applications, or interoceptive exposure. So it's so many applications in different presentations of OCD. So fear having a panic attack, right? I have to do these compulsions to keep myself safe from having a panic attack. Or somatic OCD, right? Am I blinking correctly? Am I breathing correctly? Is there something wrong with my internal systems in some way? um, and having to do compulsions around that. And so someone has a focus on, am I breathing correctly? is there something wrong with my breathing? We might have them purposely make mistakes in their breathing and do some of these interoceptives to play around with the way that like breathing feels for them.
Well, what a segue into the other thing I wanted to talk about then, which was this idea of somatic OCD. And that hits that, right? This idea of blinking and breathing. So can you tell everyone a little bit about what we mean by somatic OCD and how it focuses on the workings of the body?
Yeah, somatic OCD. So OCD is so creative, right? It can find anything to be a trigger. Somatic OCD is this worry about the physical, like the workings of your body and the different sensations within your body. And so it makes sense that having something like an interoceptive would help break that cycle. So the example I just gave, am I breathing correctly? How do I know if I'm breathing correctly? And then what somebody does is they'll then start to focus on their breathing and then analyze their breathing. And then suddenly their breathing seems really weird, right? So if I were to have us right now focus on our blinking, how often are we thinking about our blinking? So, everyone who's listening, go ahead, take 10 seconds and just focus on your blinking. Right? I don't know if that's 10 seconds. I probably should have been counting.
Yeah. But... No, it's so weird though to now think about it. Like now damn it, I'm thinking about my blinking. How annoying is
suddenly I'm very aware of my eyelids and my contacts in my eyes. And I'm like, wait, do I blink too much? Do I how am I blinking? What does it mean? So you can see how easily OCD, which hates uncertainty, can latch onto these different inner workings of our body and then attribute some sort of, there's got to be something wrong here, or am I doing this right, or does this mean that there's something medically going on? So it can be about all sorts of stuff that happens. And so interoceptive exposure can target some of those different sensations.
Yeah. And it could even be along the lines of if I'm doing it right. Have I gotten all the carbon dioxide out of my lungs?
Yeah.
And so that I can get enough oxygen back in the next breath. And so should I really, really try to exhale all that out so I can get all that oxygen, because then what if I don't get enough oxygen into the next breath? What happens to me and my body, and I'm not performing at peak efficiency and all these things? Or if I don't blink the right way and there's something in my eye, it could build up, just there's just not a limit to where OCD will go to
it's
be
so creative.
OCD, right? Right. I mean, to be that annoying jerk of a disorder that it is. Yeah. So how do you help people with the somatic OCD? What kind of ERP work do you do?
Yeah. So, I mean, always with ERP, we want to make sure it's very individualized to that person's experience, right? No two hierarchies, no two exposures are going to be 100% the same. So first of all, wanting to figure out what that person's specific triggers are, and then building the hierarchy and their compulsions and build the hierarchy around there. Definitely making sure to include interoceptive exposures in it. And I think I will just say candidly, I do see a lot of therapists maybe kind of overlooking the benefits of interoceptives. And so
I agree.
Yes, I always joke it, like when I lead a consultation, I'm like, there's a good chance I will say interoceptive exposure at some point in this consultation group or in this training, because I think it's so important to integrate it into the work. So if we were to use the example of, let's do the breathing one. I have to exhale my breath completely in order to make sure I'm working at peak efficiency for breath and getting the right amount of oxygen and all that. What I might have someone do is leave just a little bit of air left at the end. So exhale the way you normally would with the full, like, but then stop a second short, 2 seconds short, whatever it may be. And then having them continue the breath that way. So you want to kind of make mistakes in OCD's rules. We want to defy what it wants. Interoceptives for that, we can have them breathe through a straw, right? So you're not getting a peak breath when you are breathing through a straw. You can even play around with sizes of straws too. They're not super fun to do, but it is great learning opportunities. So you could breathe through a straw. You could do over breathing, which is like a forced hyperventilation, where it's It kind of creates some dizziness. You're obviously not getting a solid breath, and you're not doing the full exhale that you might want to do for that person who really wants to exhale fully. But then also, there's other types of exposures. We've got in vivo, which are these lived experiences. We've got imaginal, which are more imagined. So things like written content, or maybe listening to somebody else breathe, reading about different breathing conditions where someone cannot fully exhale. And in vivo would be having them kind of play with those different rules in their day-to-day, things like that. So really depends on the person's individual triggers, but that's just the example based off the one we talked through.
Sometimes in the blinking, I'll even have people purposely blink weird.
Oh, right? Yeah.
And it's funny when you prescribe the problem, sometimes it becomes hard for someone to do after a while, right?
Yeah.
Then it's just like they get annoyed by it and they go back to blink. Like, you're not blinking weird anymore. Isn't that interesting? Before, when you were blinking the way that you usually do, OCD was saying it was doing wrong. And now when you purposely go do it the way that OCD wants you to do, you get exhausted after about 2 minutes of doing it, and you go back to doing it that way. So maybe OCD's advice isn't quite the best.
Right?
Maybe it isn't quite right. Yeah. Have you found a piece of advice that OCD's given that was worthwhile and publishable at all, or no?
Have I? No. Can't say I have. No,
I haven't. I just didn't know if maybe you did. You might have found something I missed somewhere along the way. Yeah,
I have lots of people that are trying to find that perfect advice from OCD, but turns out most of the time it's pretty misguided, unfortunately.
Yeah. So there's people out there watching this who might be scared to start with interoceptive exposure work, or dealing with bodily sensations, somatic OCD, panic issues. How do you motivate somebody to take the step into starting to do some of these things?
Yeah, I think a really good educational foundation is important, right? Why are we doing this? And one thing to know too about interoceptives is they're not dangerous.
Right.
So the actual act itself is not dangerous. I would never ask my clients to do something that is dangerous, that is life-threatening. I do often get people to have medical clearance too, when applicable. So I work with a lot of people with chronic health conditions too. So chronic health and OCD. OCD can play off of somebody's chronic health condition. And so in those cases, a lot of times it is very important to get medical clearance before doing interoceptives. But what they find too is by doing these interoceptives, they actually manage their chronic health conditions a little bit better, because they don't feel that anxious response to their chronic health symptoms when they occur. So I guess my advice would be, get really good foundational information, recognize that it's not actually dangerous, and that the outcomes are so incredibly worth it. They truly are. I've seen interoceptives make huge changes in people's lives every day. So
I would agree. I've noticed that also, that it can do massively great things for people when they learn to face their physical sensations, when they allow themselves to live in their discomfort and recognize that uncomfortable doesn't mean dangerous, right? It doesn't mean something terrible or awful is about to happen. It doesn't mean that you're going to die, even though OCD takes it to those absolutely worst case scenario kinds of experiences. That is not necessarily the case, right?
Yeah, life's uncomfortable. And so we are learning to get comfortable with the discomfort. And your world becomes a whole lot bigger once you do that.
Yeah. What are some of the things that people will say that kind of keeps them stuck? Or how have you noticed people might stay stuck instead of fully engage in the treatment?
I think it's still kind of going back to our point earlier, still kind of holding on to that hope that anxiety won't be there.
Yeah.
Right. That there's rationally they understand, everyone feels anxious. But sometimes I see people still kind of holding on to that, what? Oh, I can't let myself fully feel that. Right. I can't fully accept that fact that things are going to be uncomfortable. And so the more you work towards this place of acceptance, I find that that's when that beautiful change really happens, is people saying, actually, all sorts of emotions are welcome here. So I'd say holding on to that, not recognizing almost the safety behavior component of that. So safety behavior being something that someone uses in response to an anxious feeling to get rid of those anxious feelings. Sometimes it's almost in preparation for the anxious feeling that they'll use a safety behavior. Now I'm going to prepare for the situation, or I'm going to not let myself fully be present so I don't feel that anxiety. And I find that gets people to feel pretty stuck.
Yeah. OCD has this, if I'll give it one thing, it has an amazing capacity to be convincing to people that just around the corner is the answer.
Yeah.
Right.
There's one more compulsion or one more and you're there.
Yeah.
Right.
The lie is, even if you get there, it will say, great, now level 2 or now level 3. And then there's infinite levels. So in our careers, which if you're 10 years in my 20, we're looking at 35 plus years of doing this work together. We have never once met a person who's satisfied OCD.
No.
Right?
Not once. Yeah. And people try, right? I just give it this one more compulsion, then it'll be good. Then OCD will get quiet.
The other piece that I think is always interesting to discuss is people will say to me, well, why does it have to be this? So why is it my blinking? Why is it my breathing? Why am I having these panic sensations? And I may not have an absolute answer, but, I can usually say it must be somehow important to you, because as you said at the beginning, people don't have issues with this stuff if they don't care about it. Right. I mean, that would be kind of funny for therapy if someone came in and said, I've got this issue going on, but I don't really care about it. They'd be like, well, it was really nice to meet you. Have a great day.
Right.
Right. It's always there. So we may not know why it's so important. And sometimes people come into treatment and say, but I have to know why.
I have to figure it out.
Yeah. And we say, well, how about this? Let's work on it. And then afterwards we can try to figure it out. And I make that kind of tongue-in-cheek offer to people because at the end, nobody ever cares to figure out where it came from by the time they've gone through the treatment, because they're so excited to have their life back there, and they realize, I didn't need to know where it came from. Yeah. I just had to know what to do about it. And that was the most important thing of all of it.
Yeah. And it's so important to help people know what to do about it, because I think too, so often when people get stuck in this analyzing spot of, well, I have to figure it out, then what happens is OCD it can shift. It can shapeshift, right? Okay, you're not caring so much about this now, but you're really caring about analyzing your feelings now, because you were so stuck on analyzing why your OCD was showing up the way that it was. And now that's where OCD is latching on, right? So I really want to help people understand the anxiety sensitivity, right? Just their reactions to anxiety, their attitudes towards these emotions, but then also just the commonality of OCD and how it's the same thing. It's just showing up a little differently. And I have all sorts of metaphors that I use for that. Sometimes it's the Scooby-Doo, they reveal the monster at the end and it's always the same guy pretty much.
Yeah. That cranky old dude. Yeah.
Right.
If it wasn't for you meddling kids, I would have figured this. I would have gotten this thing.
Right. Yeah. Every time. And it's it's not this underwater monster. It's not this big scary Frankenstein. It's this old guy who's just crabby.
Yeah. Get off my land. Yeah. Right. Yeah. The other thing. Yeah.
So they try to OCD tries to get your attention by showing up as a different monster, by showing up scary. And then you realize, it's underneath the surface. It's all OCD. And we know what to do with that.
I often love the book there. It's Grover from Sesame Street. And the book is, there's a monster at the end of this book. And Grover's begging you not to turn the page because there's a monster at the end of the book. And every page you turn, he's like, and of course you get to the last page and there's Grover and he says, it was me.
It was me. I'm the monster.
I'm the monster at the end. Okay. Right. Yeah. And that's what it's like, but it's hard to convince people to do this. Right. And so a lot of people are fixing to get ready to do it. And we try to motivate people to go and actually do it instead of just be ready.
Yeah. And I think it's so hard too, because with OCD going after what you care about, Like that feels like the one thing someone's not willing to accept uncertainty in, right? So like ask
Absolutely.
me to do all this other stuff, sure, but ooh, when it comes to that topic, I don't. That's the thing. I really care about that. I can't let myself be wrong by doing ERP.
Mhm.
And that can be tough. It's really tough to take that first step. So that's why they say fixing to get ready.
Fixing to get rid of. Well, Shauna, thank you for being here today and kind of going over some of this with us. Any final words of wisdom you'd like to leave with the audience before we're done for the day?
I think kind of the summary is that sensations and emotions are just that, right? We don't have to let them be anything more than what they are. They can all be here. I think that's part of what makes life.
Yep. Everything gets to swim in the fishbowl with us, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Shauna Pichette, thank you for being here on the Get to Know OCD podcast today. We really appreciate it. And thank you for the work you're doing with our members and helping to manage our clinicians here at NOCD as well.
Thanks for having me.
If you're looking for help for OCD-related conditions out there, check us out at NOCD.com. That's NOCD.com. And if you like the Get to Know OCD podcast, well, you can subscribe to the NOCD YouTube channel or anywhere where you get your favorite podcasts at. Until next time, be better to yourself than your OCD will ever be to you. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you later.